Welcome everyone to the Wheelie Good Podcast. It's stage 2, and after a very successful stage 1, both for the podcast and for the race, can stage 2 live up to the hype? It's a more difficult stage on paper. It's the longest stage of the race even, and it is hilly instead of a flat finish. So what have we got ahead of us, Lucas?
We had a lot of stuff happening actually. It off to a great start. It was pouring down. The rain was just constantly pouring down. And the teams were caught in traffic in their buses. So the start was delayed a little bit. That was always a great start, with the rain, delayed, always great. Early on, we had a breakaway with none other than my boy, Evenepoel, once again, one of the guys on the fantasy team. Let's go. We also had Van Moor and Andreas Legnesson, who's also on my fantasy team. I'm just saying. And finally, Fedorov. They won the breakaway. They were, I think, sprinting for one mountain sprint. Evenepoel going up there, sprinting early. He's looking good. I was like, yes, go on, my boy, go on. And he dies just like he did in stage 1 and finishes last on the mountain sprint. So a great start to the race there, really. There was also a crash like 100 kilometers from the finish, where I haven't written down here. It was Van Aert from Lotto, who was one of their main guys. They had to pace him back. It was Jordan Vingegaard from Total Energies, and it was Fred Wright from Bahrain. All down 100 kilometers to the finish. I believe all of them made it back, but I'm pretty sure they weren't there at the final when it all went to mayhem, but they made it back anyways. 100 kilometers from the finish. And the Ineos sprint, which there was some controversy with Milan being very mad at Germay for... There were some rumors about what it might be. It looked like Milan was trying to take the wheel of Germay's lead-out man, and Germay just sort of pushed him back. And Milan was like, you dare touch me. And he got mad. And that's pretty much what happened there. But I think it ended up being... first it said Milan won it, then it said Germay won it. I'm actually not sure who won it. The line photo was like this close. I could not see it with my naked eye. That's all I know. Later on in the race, around 42 kilometers to go, Adam Yates with a mechanical, which probably was one of the reasons. He also wasn't feeling great in the first stage. We know that he wasn't there at the end. But yeah, some decent stuff happening at the beginning of the stage. Not off to a great start, but it was an insane start, I feel like.
Yeah, there was also a crash in the breakaway, I believe, when Fedorov and Legnesson went down on a corner. I think they made it back and then started pacing again in the breakaway. Again, I've missed this whole stage. I've watched it on catch up. So Lucas is more in the know than I am, definitely.
Yes. I tried writing some stuff down. I'm not used to this.
Yeah, proper podcaster for once.
Oh, yeah.
And it started to get a little bit tasty towards the finish. Now, again, this is a very long stage. It's 218 kilometers long.
Long stage.
And if you're unaware of the profile, 3 climbs towards the end. One category 3, which is 1 kilometer, 10%. One category 3, another, which is 0.9 kilometers, 11%. Basically, copy and paste the climb. And finally, a category 4, 0.8 kilometers, 9%, and a gradual false flat to the line. Everybody was kind of behaving themselves in the peloton today, other than the brief crash and generally the Milan and Girmay. And actually, Brian Coquard was having a go at somebody at the intermediate sprint as well.
Oh, yeah,
so
true.
All of the sprinters were pretty unhappy for some reason or another.
Yeah. We did, however, see Philipsen, one of the sprinters. He hung on for a lot longer than I thought. He was hanging on very well, but I when I watched it, I had this feeling, because, I also ride myself in Swift. I'm pretty much a pro cyclist. There's this thing where you're going up one climb, and there's a climb later on. You're going up it, you're like, okay, I'm just going to hang on. You're pretty much, your legs are going to fire up completely. But you hang on and you're like, okay, I've made it. I can do the next one as well. You get to the next one. Suddenly like, wait. Okay, this sucks. And your legs just give out, which is probably what happened with Philipsen to a degree. And he just couldn't hang on all the way on the penultimate climb. I believe it was the penultimate climb. Correct me if
It
I'm wrong.
was, yeah. He had that yellow jersey +3 if you are a Tour de France game player. The yellow jersey buff giving him extra fitness for the day.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, he hung on for surprisingly long, but it wasn't about him or his teammate, which we will get to. It was about Visma Lease Bike, because they were controlling at the foot of all of these climbs, and it's another sort of moral win for them over UAE Team Emirates, I think.
For sure. You saw at one point it was Jorgensen up in front, Jorgensen actually attacking over the climb, Tadej having to follow, Vingegaard on the wheel. No UAE riders in sight. Tadej was completely isolated. And this is what I've been talking about, I think, in the first podcast where we did a review, where Visma are going to try this. They're going to try and isolate Tadej because they have one thing, good riders, of course. Another thing, superior strategy, 100%. So they'll try and isolate him, and then they'll try and do some 1-2 with whoever's there. Not Yates anymore because he's pretty much out of the GC. But Jorgensen, still very much in the GC. And can very much put Tadej in a dangerous position where does he chase with Vingegaard on his wheel? Is that a smart idea, or does he just let him go and hope he can get back in the mountains? He ended up not needing to pace him down because we had some other riders. I don't remember who exactly. I think Van Der Poel was one of them who wanted to stop the breakaways. But thankfully for him, he wasn't the only one in that group, because otherwise that would have been bad.
Yeah, exactly. And we ended up having a situation where Van Aert entered the sort of final couple of climbs first wheel. And Visma went on to say that they were riding for Van Aert originally. Right. Now, Jorgensen has said they were always riding for Van Aert. Jonas has come out in an interview and said they were riding for Van Aert, but they had to change the plan. And I think that is more feasible, certainly than the others, because Van Aert looked like he was pacing for Jonas the whole day. And at the foot of the climb, when Van Aert pulled off, you had Visma kind of ganging up, really, on Tadej Pogacar. And Vingegaard trying an attack over the top of the final climb of the day.
What would your theory be in terms of the riding for Wout Van Aert? When do you think they changed their mind? Do you think it was on the day, like during the race, before the race? He said he wasn't feeling great.
I reckon it was probably sort of that first Category 3 climb, where like Wout sort of, they went, test the legs and then see how you are, because he was in a domestique role on the second to last climb, clearly. So I wonder whether you sort of like 170, 180 kilometers in went, how are you feeling, Wout? And Wout went, nah, not great. So Visma were pacing and Vingegaard attacks, and you get this kind of group that forms of elite riders. It's Jonas Vingegaard, it's Tadej Pogacar, Remco Evenepoel, Mathieu Van Der Poel, Romain Gregoire, fair play, what a ride by the Groupama FDJ guy, and Kevin Vauquelin latched on. But no Primoz Roglic. Roglic missed the move.
He did, somehow, some way, but we did see him later on. He came back. He finally had a team this time, it seems. Whether he knew, I doubt he knew he was going to be able to pace it back. I think he just wasn't well positioned and just didn't really have double legs and whatnot. But it ended up working in their favor anyways, because he didn't have to spend nearly as much, I was about to say as much stamina like it's a Tour de France game, as much energy perhaps on keeping up with him, and just had to pace him back in a, steady pace, I guess.
Needed to do the blue gel strat. But
exactly.
A guy who didn't have teammates or didn't use them in a fantastic way was Remco Evenepoel. It was another bad day for Soudal Quickstep, which Remco kind of recovered by being alert himself, because I didn't see any teammates around him for the climbs where you had to be positioned well. And certainly for a couple of those, he was towards the back of the group, which is not where you want to be at all.
Yep. I think only on the first Category 3 climb, I think they started off the climb near the front, and then everything just, they started pacing hard, Visma, etc. And suddenly they're just not there. It's just Remco on his own, which I saw, but I wasn't paying too much attention to. I think I was paying a lot of attention to Vingegaard, to be honest, but that's my bad. But yeah, Remco is getting let down by his team here a little bit, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. But you had these attacks go, and Vingegaard was ultimately unsuccessful. But then you had a counter move, which included Kevin Vauquelin and Matteo Jorgensen. And later on, Guillaume Boivin, fair ride from him for Israel Premier Tech. He managed to get across and tried helping out with those guys. He couldn't.
Yep.
He was sitting on the back. But you had a kind of situation where, actually, I think it was Lutsenko rather than Guillaume Boivin. It'd be amazing if Guillaume Boivin was there. Lutsenko was sitting on the back because he just spent all his energy to get across. Fair play.
Yeah.
Do you think Jorgensen should have paced with Kevin Vauquelin to take away seconds from Pogacar?
Yeah, that's the thing I would have loved to. But maybe he was too scared that, someone like Van Der Poel would attack, Tadej would follow. And then he would end up losing time in the GC, so I guess he played it safe. Or maybe he just didn't have the legs. He didn't feel like he had the legs to, keep a high enough cadence and watts all the way. I would hope to say it's just playing it safe and not him lacking the legs. But it might be either of them, or both of them, to be fair.
I think it is playing it safe because, I feel like if Visma had one more rider in there that they could use to sort of protect Jonas and monitor Pogacar's attack, then that would be the ideal scenario for Jorgensen to just attack. So I think they played it safe, and I think it was a little bit of a tactical blunder, but I can see why they've done it because in the sprint we later saw that Pogacar kind of had a better kick than Jonas Vingegaard.
For sure.
But they get reeled in, and we get to the sprint, but not before we see a couple of attacks. Florian Lipovitz tries a cheeky move off the front for Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe. It's the first we're seeing of him properly.
I was praying, man. I saw it, I was like, yes, go, my boy, go. Because I've been saying it. All these guys are saying, I know nothing about cycling. I know ball, okay? Jorgensen, Lipovitz, both attacking. I've mentioned it so many times. I know ball. It just didn't work. That's a different part. But yes, he attacked and he won a decent amount, but we sort of realized, now he doesn't have the kick to go far enough, and they were clearly chasing him down very hard. But I think it was a very valiant effort.
Yeah, it was certainly a good try, to say the least. And as he was reeled in, you got to the foot of this sort of false flat, which looked actually more difficult on TV than it seemed to begin with. You had all of the big guns coming to the front, most notably Uncle Julien Alaphilippe.
Yes.
I quite enjoyed his presence in this group. He may not have the legs at the moment, but he has the vibes. And he has kept the vibes for his career. Tried a move. Honestly, it was a bit like watching a man run through treacle. Van der Poel kind of closed him. Could have had a cup of tea. But it was fun to see Julien back, and hopefully he grows into this race, I think.
It really was, man. I was like, wait, Alaphilippe's in this group? Wait a minute. I was 100% cheering for him, but still a top 5 and he ended up getting. It's still a really good result, I feel like, considering who he was up against. But man, I would have wished he could have gone all the way, man. And
there was a nice interview after the stage with Oscar Onley of DSM on British TV, where he was talking about the fact that he was right with the best guys in the final sprint. He ended up finishing 6th on the stage, and we'll get to the stage winner. But he said there was a moment where I was just sat behind Alaphilippe and Van der Poel, and I had Pogacar and Vingegaard on my wheel, and I was like, oh my word, I am in a race here.
Imagine
and it was
that.
like, just what is the polar bear doing in Arlington, Texas, But it went to a final sprint, and because there were no kind of lead-outs there, it was kind of every man for himself, so the strongest rider would win. And Mathieu Van Der Poel was the strongest. I don't mean to blow my own trumpet here and say that we both on the podcast know ball. But if you did listen to the preview, I said that UAE and Visma were going to rip this to make sure that Pogacar and Jonas weren't caught in a crash. It will be a small group, and it will be a day for somebody to capitalise on Jonas and Pogacar attacking each other. And who did I pick to capitalise? Mathieu Van Der Poel. Thank you very much. That's one podcast pickup for me on the
That's it.
Tour de France preview.
High. Final episode. We're done.
Yep. You got the Lipovitz and Jorgensen call.
Yep.
I get the Van Der Poel call. That is the peak of the podcast. It's only downhill from here.
It is so far downhill. Skelmoser was in the group as well, but he was way too far the back. I was hoping to see him near the front, but he ended up finishing 23rd. So, he was up there at least. That's all that matters. But I feel like if you were to yesterday have told me, okay, the winner is Van Der Poel, second place Pogacar, and third place Vingegaard, I'd be like, yeah, seems about right. Like it's sort of the thing that I think is the most expected outcome of the race was this right here. At least those top three.
Yeah, I think Vingegaard probably benefited from it being a long, hard stage. I think if it was a shorter stage, you would have seen those guys with better sprints, somebody like Gregoire, Velasco, etc., probably fly past. But I think because there was so much difficulty at the start and on those climbs beforehand, Vingegaard finishes third, which, fair play to him, picks up 4 bonus seconds. That's quite hard to say when you're in a rush. And only loses 2 bonus seconds to Pogacar, which I think if you're Jonas Vingegaard, that is a great result.
You take that for sure. I think also part of it is he knows he has to stick to Pogacar's wheel no matter what, while the others might be sort of like playing in a different way. And I think also the other riders sort of allowing Vingegaard to stay in his wheel because they know that's the battle. So he has the position and he knows he has to follow. He's like, I'm going to die for this. So like I feel like in a way mentally that gives him an extra edge because he knows he just has to stick to his wheel, while the others might think more towards the stage win. And if it's not a stage win, I think I might give him like a sort of extra one to the third place anyways.
Yeah, and the only time he really lost the wheel was right in that final sprint. Van Der Poel won it by about a bike length, but Pogacar was in the wheel for most of the sprint, so he kind of had the draft. It was a fairly comfortable win when you counter that, but actually on the line it was fairly close. Jonas was put on a bit of a gap, but was given 0 seconds, as was pretty much the first sort of 26 riders now looking at it. And Jasper Philipsen won the bunch sprint behind in the yellow jersey, so pretty good result from him. Other names that were in the front group: Joao Almeida, who did a good job in the final at least, pacing attacks down, the likes of Lipovitz, but leaving the Alaphilippe attack to Pogacar and Van Der Poel. Remco Evenepoel made it safely in the front group. Primož Roglic, the same. Skelmoser, Lipovitz, we've talked about as well. But a couple of riders lost a little bit of time today. 2 of the riders in particular I want to talk about.
Okay.
And this is Ben O'Connor, first one, who was involved, of course, in the crash yesterday. Of course, he actually did quite a good ride, I think, to be in that second group, which was 31 seconds down. But also Tobias Harlan Johannesson. So both the time that those two made up in the crosswinds has now kind of been brought back back down to earth, really.
Very true. Man. Wait, is Johannesson on my... He's not. I do like Johannesson though, not just because he's Scandinavian. That is the only reason. So it's sad to see, but he still got a little edge, I guess, on the ones he gained time on. Like, what was it? I guess 8 seconds or 9 seconds. Was it 40 or 39 seconds? I don't remember yesterday.
Yeah, so they're still in the top 10 on GC, despite dropping all of their seconds today. However, they're still quite comfortably sort of 18 seconds, I think, ahead. No, actually, 8 seconds ahead of Roglic, who, of course, lost all that time in the crosswinds the day before. So your crosswinds guys are still slightly ahead, but I think he wanted to be in the front group, especially. Given that riders such as Alexandre Delectre for Total Energy, good ride from him, and some of the miscellaneous domestique guys that are okay on this terrain, but not GC guys. Some of these guys made it, and I think it was a day where you kind of needed to be on form.
It might be a little bit early, but if I were to ask you, who do you think will take third place now? Would your pick still be Remco Evenepoel, or are you looking for someone who might not have lost time yet? Or
I think, my pick would still be Remco, but just keep an eye out for a certain Spaniard on Movistar called Enric Mas.
Oh, Yep.
Because he was in the front group for the crosswinds.
Yep.
And he was also in the front group today. So he's bumped himself up quite nicely to 6th on GC. Your top 5 is Jorgensen 5th, Vauquelin 4th. All 3 of those guys, including Massa, on 10 seconds. Vingegaard on 6th, Pogacar on 4, and Van Der Poel is the new yellow jersey. And then from that point down, it's 31 seconds. So we've now thinned ourselves out to a group of 6 that are within 30 seconds of the lead. And Enric Massa is one of those 6. I think he's come into this tour on form. Now, whether he tails off towards the end, which is not something that Massa usually does. He's usually a good Grand Tour rider, but especially in the Vuelta a España. Not really shown it in the Tour. Maybe this year's a little bit different for him.
Maybe. I would like maybe a bit more of a rogue pick. I could see Jurgensen not losing too much time and maybe stealing a 3rd place. I would like to say
he is looking good.
He is. I can see him in the top 5, ending top 5 GC. And a 3rd place, I don't think is out of the question. It's, still very early. It's just, all speculation, but might as well, Because then later on, if it does happen, we'd be like, yeah, told you.
And then to round out the rest of the classifications, Vauquelin leads the young riders jersey. Good result for him because he's the only young rider in that sort of elite 6-man group at the front of GC. Points jersey still belongs to Jasper Philipsen. Biniam Girmay in 2nd. Van Der Poel has bumped himself into 3rd on 50 points now. And that's 21 points behind his teammate. And Mountains jersey. We're already seeing Tadej Pogacar in King of the Mountains. What is going on?
What's happening? He's got 3 points. This is why Vingegaard was going for it, man. He's 1 point behind on the first
Maybe
stage.
It was a tactical move from Jonas so that Tadej has to do all the interviews.
Exactly. The commentators were mentioning that actually in the Danish broadcast. They were like, does Jonas really want that? But I'm sure it was a tactical move. But Jonas, he's smart. We all know that.
Speaking of Jonas, have you seen in the media, this was Danish media that reported this, so maybe you have. His wife did an interview recently that was talking about she kind of wants to see Jonas at home a bit more, and he's kind of wondering whether to reduce the amount he's on the bike, so go to less training camps and do less racing. I wonder what you think about that as a Dane, because he's your main guy at the moment. Of course, there's Mads Pedersen, but a Tour de France winner kind of engulfs everything else.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I know he's a real family guy, but he very clearly also has a huge passion for cycling. And I feel like they would talk about it. Now, Vingegaard let me just check. How old is he? He is 28. He's definitely still got a couple of years left in him and the very top level. And I think that could be, he could be like, listen, babe, I got a couple of years left in me. I'm not washed yet. No, but something like that. And I don't see him going down at least the next 2 years, unless he gets to a point where eventually people fall off, and he gets to that point where he sort of maybe finishes 10th or something. Then I could see him definitely starting to really slow down. But until that time comes and he's still one of the 2 best GC riders in the world, I don't see him slowing down.
Yeah, I think he's also, because he's not been in the sport too heavily, as a junior, he wasn't incredibly touted in the same way that Remco and Tadej kind of were.
Yeah.
He was kind of a latecomer to the sport in that regard. Obviously, you're not a latecomer to the sport if you joined in 2019 and you're 28 now.
Yeah.
But in terms of the new generation, where you're entering the sport at 18, 19, 20, he is slightly late to the sport, so he probably has more years left in him than Tadej perhaps would do at 28, I think, or someone like Remco. So, yeah, I get the point that he is a family man and all of this. Yeah. And to be honest, I can see him perhaps if he wins a 3rd, if he wins this year and then doesn't win the next year, I think I can see him being content with 3, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And not necessarily calling it a day, but kind of toning off a little bit, maybe trying to go for stage wins or be a domestique. But yeah, I'm interested to see his moves, certainly later in this tour and perhaps later in his career in the next couple of years, to see how he traverses this sort of difficulty.
Yeah, I think also, I mean, he's not poor by any means, but since he hasn't been in the game for so long, the economical standpoint, like, he's earning plenty of money right now while he's at this peak. And if he can keep this peak, the longer he can keep it, the more money he can, save up, put in the bank, also for his family. That's also doing something for your family. So that's definitely also something that would be into consideration. Because, if you slow down, the money's going to start flowing back. And since he knows he won't, do this forever, he might as well get the best out of it while he's there.
And somebody else who's going to be laughing straight to the bank is the owner of Alpecin, because they've already picked up 2 victories on this tour. Mm-hmm. Great little promotion for them. I mean, how many wins have they racked up now? Philipsen's got his 10th, and I think all of those have been on Alpecin de Koning. Van der Poel's got 2.
Oh,
have any of their other riders won? Either way, minimum 12. In the same time, it's taken Movistar to win 0. This is big numbers being put up by Alpecin, and this is a statement at the start of this Tour de France. Do you think they can continue it as time goes on?
Oh, I mean, with Van der Poel and Philipsen in the team, yes, for sure. I think Philipsen still might have one more stage win in them, come the next stages. And Van der Poel, I feel like he definitely has if not a stage win, a top 3 left in the Tour for sure. So I don't see it slowing down.
Yeah, I mentioned in the preview podcast that if Van der Poel is on, and I wasn't expecting him to be on, I think that was an unlikely occurrence, because he rarely ever sort of turns up 100% for the Tour, because he does all these classics, and that's where he dominates. But I said that if Van der Poel's on, he has a chance at winning 99% of this first week. And he looks on. This is Van der Poel that looks in form.
He does. Man. The question is, though, can he do it tomorrow? On stage 3, we got loads of crosswind, and it might be... I feel like the teams will be more, aware of what might happen after stage 1. But do you think we could see somewhat of a similar scenario?
I think teams might want to force it in the crosswinds. I don't think there'll be as much crosswind, but I think certainly the teams like Lidl Trek and Quickstep that missed it the first day will kind of want to be out for revenge and try harder in these crosswinds. Will there be extreme gaps? I don't think so. This might be the first stage where we see a flat out sprint between the best guys. So I'm gonna stick with my podcast preview pick, I think, of Tim Merlier.
That's fair.
But yeah, I see a stage that could be a bit chaotic with the crosswinds. Do I think it's likely? I don't think it's as likely as stage 1.
No, I mean, if it's historically accurate with the Tour de France game, then there's no wind, because apparently there's just never a wind on the stage 3. So, but yeah. I'm still sticking with, I'm pretty sure I said Milan, and I'll say Milan again, because of the fantasy team. Let's get into that. The fantasy... Oh, wait, do we want to get to yours first? Just to get it over quick.
Yeah, let's do mine first.
I've seen you're a bit far down in the league rankings.
Yeah, a bit. I mean, I'm where am I?
Scroll down.
I think I'm 94th.
Yep.
In your league. There's more than 100 in the league. However, they've been moved into a separate division. So I'm 94th out of 100, and I had a look. 5 of the guys haven't even played. So I am officially second to last. I'm not last. There is one person that has managed to be worse than me.
Lenny is doing worse?
Yep, Lenny's doing worse. Lenny Martinez on my team is also doing terribly.
Oh, let's have a look.
He looked pretty perky in his pre-race interviews on this stage. So I think it was a skill issue rather than him being ill.
Might be.
And I quite enjoyed Fred Wright, who was like, brother, this guy needs to ride at the front more often because he's just going to get dropped if he sits at the back. And I was like, maybe say that to him in private. Van Aert I've got, who crashed today. Fantastic. Really good for my team. I did get Velasco in my team, who was 11 stars and finished in the front group at the very least. So that was one positive on a very downbeat day for my team. Velasco finishes 9th. Schoens, he'll come good eventually. And then Milan, Liam Bittner. Along with Remco Evenepoel, who was my stage winner bonus, and finished comfortably in the front group, but did not trouble the sprint. He was 17th today. Your team, on the other hand.
My team. Oh, well, I forgot to change the team. I wanted to change the stage winner bonus to... I think I was going for Lipovic, which wouldn't have made much of a difference. Maybe like 10 points. But it was Milan. We have only finishing in the final group. 110 points, not bad. Milan with a bonus, 54. Go to my also there with 40 for the Ineos sprint. You had Wright, who also picked up 13. Lignason in the breakaway, 194 points. Admiral, 202. Those two are carrying my team at the moment. I love breakaways. And Lipovic with a good 32. So not a bad day at the office, I don't feel like. Let's just see, I am around 19th actually. 19th overall. The front guys here all have both Tadej Pogacar and Van Der Poel. Can't really do much about that. But I feel like that's a decent day in the office though. We still have transfers to do. And I'm sure Taylor can still come back later on with some huge predictions.
Second half of the season we're doing a title charge. That's all I'm saying. I'm tanking in this first week, just to show off the elite value of my comeback.
Smart.
But yeah, like breakaways seem to be the meta in the fantasy this year, and Armorai is providing that for you. He's not really winning the KOM sprints. Nope. I mean, for a man who was king of the mountains in the Dauphiné, and I think it was at Basque Country, or was it at Valenciana? It was one of the early season Spanish races. For a guy who has won the King of the Mountains jersey in 2 races this year, I was expecting him to kind of be better at KOM sprints.
Yeah, same.
Gotta be honest.
I did get the shout from someone, I think, on a Discord server, who said that he was one of the guys who spent most in a breakaway, like, I think third most in breakaways this entire season. So that was why I was a little bit bio-picked him. I also was expecting Lignason to not necessarily go into that kind of breakaway, but at least try some kind of breakaways, which worked out as well. So yeah, I'm doing good.
Yeah, and he's French time trial champion, so he might be a little outside pick in the time trial. Not necessarily for a stage win, but for a good result. Although he might have burnt the legs based on his breakaways in the first 2 days. So who have you got for tomorrow then?
I'm taking Milan. I'm sticking with my pick. My boy needs a win. Because Maspelin's not there, he would have won he would have won stage 2 and stage 1. I'm just saying, I'm just putting it out there. Need a win, Milan. Come on, need a win.
Yeah, stage 1 feels like a very Mads Pedersen stage with all the crosswinds and then the sprint at the end. If Pedersen was there with Philipsen, we might have seen a different result. But yeah, Milan's a good pick, definitely.
And you're going with Merlier again, or?
I am going with Merlier again. I'm going to pick him until he wins, which may be for the rest of this tour.
Yeah, even the mountain stage is just moment to Merlier. He's got to win. He's got to do it.
This time, Col de la Loz, it's happening.
It's happening this time. Trust me, guys. Trust me.
He's going in the breakaway. Anyway, I think that's all. We've exhausted ourselves for today. And quite a lot of the peloton will be pretty exhausted at the end of the longest stage of this Tour de France.
For sure.
It's a sprint stage tomorrow. There could be chaos. There might not be. If we're going by my predictions, it was another pretty chaotic stage today. Maybe not as chaotic as day 1. What would we rate it out of 10?
I think like there's some stuff happened. Like it was exciting, but once again, I think the finish lets me down because it's the number 1 predictable outcome, I feel like. And it was entertaining, but it's nowhere near the first stage, I don't think. I'll give it like a 7 out of 10, I think is fair.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7 as well, even though I didn't watch it. I think that more teams should have been putting riders in the breakaway to start off with. Yeah. Because, in all honesty, Van Der Poel, Vingegaard and Pogacar was the most predictable top 3 ever.
Yes, exactly.
And none of the other teams were going to win the stage unless they put a guy in the breakaway. Maybe they're saving their guys for later on.
Maybe.
Which is pretty logical. Lots of teams will probably play it safe in this first week. But I fear that the only way to beat the best is to outdo them in terms of the quantity of riders at the front of the race. And some teams need to get their act together and start putting riders up the road.
Maybe we'll see it tomorrow. Who knows? But that is tomorrow. Hopefully you enjoyed this podcast today. Of course, only around 5% of people are subscribed. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and also give us 5 stars on Spotify. Let's go. And thank you all for tuning and listening. And we'll see you all again tomorrow. Bye.